I'm Connie Moser. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Nights at the Round Table. My guest tonight is Kathie Conn. Kathie, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Great to see you, Connie.
Thank you. I've known you for a really long time.
A very long time.
But what we're going to do tonight, what we're going to talk about tonight is a little bit different from what I know you. What we're going to talk about tonight is the Death Cafe. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, you brought up our longevity, and I was thinking, if you were still doing cakes, you could make a Death Cafe cake.
Sure.
I know, but we're not. So yes.
I have made coffins, though.
That's true. So Death Cafe is a brand new opportunity in the United States to get people together to be able to talk about death. Not dying, not grief, not the process of dying, but just the word. So many of us, I believe, can't even think about the word, let alone say the word, without having some negative connotation to it, like it's too scary, I'm too old, I'm too young, it'll hurt somebody, it'll scare some, there's a lot of resistance about talking about it.
Do you practice with people? Do you say, can you say, I am going to die? Do you practice that with people?
No, because the whole idea of Death Cafe is to bring people together to talk about their concepts and thoughts about death.
Oh, I see.
Now, I can say what works for me, and I can say, hey, I am going to die, and I have said this to you already in the past. I'm pretty joyful about it. It's a big celebration at the end of my life. So I'm kind of cheerful about it.
Well, technically, that's the way most people who believe in God believe that they're going to a better life. And so it should be joyful at the end. But what we associate with death or the lack of, there's so much involved that we have no control over. And people are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to experience it. They're afraid they're going to be in pain. They're afraid they're going to need someone to take care of them. And it's just who wants to talk about those unpleasant things? We don't want it. It's so much easier to just pretend that's not going to happen. Yeah.
True. We could as a society, and we do mostly go through life with that concept, but I'm becoming more aware that it's about the people I leave behind. How do I want to help them? So if I can, and I have, so it's a little easier for me, I think. If I can own my fears, if I can understand that fear is more about me, then I kind of put that to rest. So I can say, how will my daughter feel? What can I do to help her? I don't want her to carry the burden of my pain, my angst, my fear. So if you move it outside yourself, I really think when people talk about it and then begin to realize, do I want my family to carry that? If I'm not going to talk to them about it, then it's a fearful thing, so I'm just passing that fear on.
Is this something you thought of on your own, or it's a program? Or
it is. In 2004, I became a celebrant, which is an end-of-life celebrant, and the Celebrant Foundation was formed in the United States in 2004, and it's a profession that allows me to help people transition into death, whether that be funeral, whether that be death ceremonies where people want to party before they go, or they want to celebrate it in a way. And I really was called a long time ago to death, because we just don't do it well in this country.
Yeah.
In 2004, however, those thoughts were not the most popular thoughts. And I didn't get a lot of opportunity to do it. Talking with a lot of the funeral directors here in the county, they were kind of off-put by my jovial nature about having people do celebrations, ceremonies, rituals around death, maybe before it happens or after. So it kind of laid fallow for a while. And this past April, the Celebrant Foundation was contacted by John Underwood from England, who has been having death cafes all throughout Europe for the last several years. And he needed an avenue to bring the concept to the United States. And he found the Celebrant Foundation in New Jersey. And he thought, what a great door to come into, because there's a lot of people with open-minded differences on how to celebrate life. So he actually created a conference call, and we were all invited who were interested in death to join this conference call. So I believe there were 45 of us on the phone, and there were 5 countries, and John explained the Death Cafe process in England and wanted to know if any of us were interested in introducing it to the United States, he would give us the outline that he created and the format and go forth and pass on the word of death. And I jumped on it because I thought, this is it. This is the venue. It's not going to be with funeral homes. It's not going to be working in creating ceremonies. But if I can bring people together
and yet it would be, funeral homes would be the ideal partner, wouldn't they?
Well, you know, Connie,
I mean, wouldn't it be great if they would demystify the whole ordeal?
Yes, and here's what I found out. Because again, this only came into the United States in April. We've had two. My partner Barbara and I have had two in May and June. Arizona and 6 other states had them in April right away. So I thought, just what you did, let me call some funeral homes in the county, a cemetery, and say I would like to have a place to meet with my death cafe, and that you would have thought I was speaking Japanese. And they were like, why would you want to bring people to our funeral home? And I went, well, eventually they may need to visit you. So I'm thinking, and I explained the process. It's where people come together to talk about their feeling on death and how to sort of demystify it, like you said. And you would have thought I was speaking a foreign language, and they're like, why would we want them here then?
Oh, I think they're missing a good opportunity.
I think they are too. Now, granted, it's only been a 2-month cycle, so I've only called a handful, and we are representing Northern Virginia, so I'm going to spread out into Springfield and Fairfax and kind of move around. But the 4 that I contacted here in the county were like, well, no, we're really, if we're interested, we'll call you. So I called a couple of cemeteries, did the same thing, and said, wouldn't you like to have people wanting to come to you before the event happens? And no, they weren't receptive either. So here's what I came to in my own brain. I'm talking about death. The people that I was calling deal in dying. And I now see that there's a difference.
There is a difference, yes.
So they're like all about wanting you when you're all fuzzed up and you need that last moment thing. So the whole concept of coming years or months or whenever before it happens, they were not wrapped around that.
But that would be just ideal.
And
because that's a big part of what we're scared of.
Yes,
is what
the
happens,
process.
What happens to me?
Now there was a cafe, I think it was in Ohio, because there's a lot of them now, 6, so I'm trying to keep up on everyone's Facebook page, that actually went to the crematorium.
Okay,
And
that might be a bit much for me.
Well, maybe, but I thought, and the crematorium was thrilled that people wanted to know what it involved.
Yeah.
So that it demystifies it. When you're not in the throes of dying, these things are pretty fascinating. There's another death cafe that was held, I believe, in Tucson, where they actually have open cremations, like the Vikings did, the big pyres. And people came for the death cafe meeting, and the person actually lit the pyre to show them what it would look like.
Holy cow.
So it's an outdoor, like we used to do hundreds of years ago, green cemeteries, where it's just woodlands, where you just bring your remains or cremains and you bury it yourself in the dirt. There are 2 in Virginia, Harrisonburg and Staunton.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And so there's all these opportunities that I thought would be a great place to hold meetings. And again, they're more about dying.
I did look up once if you could be buried in your automobile in the state of Virginia.
You can.
You can.
Yes. I had, and when I was in school training to be a celebrant, a person actually got buried on his motorcycle. Sitting on the motorcycle.
We had a 77 Plymouth Roadrunner that I was pretty sure was going to go with Bill when he went, but...
Well, as long as you're burying, now could you have fired it with, I don't know. You know, we're so strange in our rituals. In fact, home funerals have become very popular in the last 10 years.
And that's what they were years ago, before the turn of the century, right? When you say like 1800s?
It was exactly when the concept of undertakers began to realize there was some profitability in it. So right around the early 1900s, it became more of someone else you called. As time went on, then it was not home care, but we put them in the hospital. Most 80% of people die in the hospital.
Yeah.
And that's so different in the last, a little over 100 years.
We've done the same thing with birth.
And we're coming back. So home funerals are pretty popular. So
That's what I would think the majority of people want to do, is just die peacefully at home.
But I don't think they know that anymore.
Oh, really?
Like we were talking earlier about the medication, the life machines, the huge full core press for doctors to give you one more opportunity for one more treatment that might be able to keep you living just a few days longer.
Yeah.
They're all going to die, you know, I mean, but try to get a doctor to actually say to you, this is it, you should stop. I don't think it would happen.
Well, there's an incredible amount of money in everything associated with extending life.
Yes.
People are making money hand over fist.
Yes.
And so to try to get people to embrace what's normal and natural, which is to just let go, flies in the face of a lot of wealthy people who don't want you to do that.
Well, also machines, all the equipment that technology has done, it costs money, I'm sure, you know. And the part of me does believe they believe that, because I do know doctors, I believe this, are trained to cut and prescribe.
Yeah.
That's what they're trained at, and that's what they learn to do with expert skills. So the goal is to perform that expert skill.
That's a good way of looking at it.
That's how I think about it. My father-in-law died tragically, and they wanted him to be on life support because the way he died, we had never seen it before. He was poisoned accidentally with fluoride. And we've never seen that in the country, that someone died from fluoride, drinking it. But the point of all this is each doctor came from different parts of the country and the world because they'd never seen that kind of a death. And they had him on life support. So when the neurologists came in and did whatever they needed to do, they would come to us in the waiting room and go, the neurological system, it's really functioning. And my poor mother-in-law kept thinking, that's wonderful. Or the pulmonologist came in and said, we've got some lung function. But he was dead. But they were talking about that what they were doing helped the process of the lungs with the fluoride death. And eventually, it was clinical, but they were excited that, you know, they were there, they were able to see it, but finally we just talked my mother-in-law not to be in the waiting room anymore, you know, because they wanted to share their exciting adventure that they did something that helped the lungs breathe.
And there is something to be said for the experimental and the
observation of something that's never been seen before. Totally understand it.
And the benefit to someone else who may down the road have the
absolutely.
same thing. I get all that, but it should still be a choice. It should be something that you can consciously say, yes, I want to do this, or no, I'm sorry,
Well, they did
I
ask
don't.
us. They did ask Irene, because no one has ever seen it in the world. So we did give the okay to do that, but we needed to remove her from that excitement of finding the different systems that were working differently, whatever.
Was she an older woman?
They were in there, they just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. He died that night. And so I think she was in her late 60s maybe, but that was 25 years ago.
Oh,
So it's been a while. But that was my experience, that the doctors are very excited about being able to do the thing that they're trained to do. But with all of that, I think they've lost the concept that we are going to die, even though their industry wants us to stay alive. And I'm glad about directives and ideals and laws that let us now in our non-dying years to decide how we want to go.
well, those end-of-life directives, or DNR, if you have a DNR, and not you, obviously, because
Not
if
yet,
you have a
but
DNR,
I do have a DNR.
but you wouldn't be the one that would call the ambulance if you had the DNR. But it is possible that your spouse would want to call an ambulance.
Right.
And if he were to do that, then they would be obligated to try to
Resuscitate you.
Uh-huh.
In Virginia, the state law is if you call 911, they're required by law to resuscitate you.
So
do
what would
every
be a better option if?
You know, I don't know, because if I fell down dead now, you know, I can't imagine me. The only way Paul would not, he would not do the DNR but I could just imagine that if I dropped dead, like got hit by a car, some tragic, and quickly. If I were dying, in a process of dying, then he wouldn't call. He'd either probably take me in, or I'd be in hospice. And then the hospice people would take care of it. Because I know in other experiences, hospice does recommend that if you are in hospice and something happens when they're not there, don't call 911. Call hospice.
Would you carry those orders with you? Theoretically, you should almost have them on you.
In the process where you've been given that time, like, you know, you're going, at the time that I learned this, you were supposed to tape your DNR on the wall above your bed.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
So that maybe, I don't know if they would not do it if they saw it there. You also do your prescriptions, all the meds that you're on at the time, so that if you do go in the ambulance, they know what you've been on. But my goal for me is hospice. So I would be in hospice care, and they would take care of everything. My family would know not to do anything but call hospice, and they're the ones that would come.
Do you discuss these kind of topics in the Death Cafe?
The Death Cafe helps people to experience their own experience towards it, and we've only had 2 here in the county, but my long-term goal is to bring folks of knowledge, lawyers, doctors, hospice, to do a little presentation on what is available. It's a fine line with the Death Cafe, because its core principles are not to push people in any particular direction, not to move it into an Kathie, thinking they should be here, but just to expose them to what they might want to know about, whether now or 5 years from now, or even maybe talk to their own parents about it.
How helpful, I mean, it would, obviously, it would be very helpful to experience that when you're not under stress.
Absolutely.
This would be the time to do it. Let's just go have cake and coffee.
Cakes and tea, and let's talk about, so like, what is your dream when you go? One of the classes when I was training, I had to interview a lot of people on how they have talked to their family about death. What are their plans? So I went up and down my cul-de-sac talking to my neighbors.
Were they happy to see you,
They were
Kathie?
not. They were sort of like, what is she into now? What do you mean you want to talk about? What do you mean, how do I want to go? Well, I'm doing this program to be certified, so I'm asking you. You've got 4 children. Do they know how you want to die? Well, yeah, they'll put me in the ground. Okay, but how do you want them to experience your death? Well, I'm not going to talk about that. So it was a lot of resistance back in '04. Now the same people on my cul-de-sac are coming to my Death Cafe.
Oh, really?
So time moves on, things change. I'm hoping that that's a good sign, because, you know, at 58, I don't want to be dropping dead and not have my family know what my wishes are.
Sure.
I've been talking about it since I was in my 40s, you know. It's like, I want to make sure this, and this happens, and we have martinis and John Denver music. I have it down to, you know.
I'm going to have Ozzy Osbourne. I'll see you on the other
side. You had said that. You had said that. So I think planning now, when I'm not faced with it, is going to be the best thing for my family. My mother is in end stages of Alzheimer's, and my 2 brothers don't believe it. She's doing fine. She looks good.
Oh.
She looks really good. And I'm like, yeah, for a woman who's dying, you know, and they're just not there.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting.
My husband too. His mother has Alzheimer's, and he never talks about it. He doesn't even want to talk to her. Well, she doesn't know him when he calls, or she doesn't recognize him, or if he goes in person, she doesn't recognize him.
And that really wouldn't be the time either.
Yeah, it's way too late.
Yeah, so, you know, waiting until I'm 90, my daughter won't know what I want. But every now and again, I mean, Paul and I both plan on being cremated, and our goal is to have our daughter bring our cremains to Sapphire Beach in St. Thomas, because that was our favorite vacation place, and sort of sprinkle us around.
Can you do that? Is that legal?
I don't know. It's St. Thomas, but I figured a little cup here in the ocean every now and again for a week, we'd all be in there. Return to the earth, you know.
Yeah.
And I said to her, "That's what Paul and I want to do. But do you need a gravesite? Do you need to go somewhere? Do you need a headstone? Because if you need that, we'll do it. You know, because you're going to be here. So what would make you happy?" And years ago, we went to the Renaissance Fair, and Paul and I had our faces done in clay as we were kissing. They did a mold of us kissing. And she said, no, I just want to take that porcelain face of you and Paul kissing, and I'll just put it on my wall, and every now and again I'll have a candle or put a flower, and that's how I want to remember you. Fine.
Good for her.
Yeah. But if I hadn't talked to her about it,
Yeah.
what would she have done? Well, you know, maybe she wanted a grave with a gravestone, you know, type of thing.
I don't even understand that whole concept, really. Arlington, I like the order and the precision and the regularity, but most graveyards just look like an awful investment of money for who? I mean, not for the dead person,
No,
obviously.
but for the stonemasons.
Yeah.
Arlington's different because you're gifted that, being part of the military. I love cemeteries. The older, the better, because the artwork is unbelievably cool. But yeah, so in a way, it's almost like a dying art. No pun. In that, you know, if people get more cremated, and if, you know, they're not going to put that kind of money in marble and stone and big things, it could possibly be a dying one. But there is a lot of money in dying.
And it takes a lot of real estate.
Yeah.
And in some places, they are, I think Japan,
Well, Arlington doubles you up.
are they?
And like my mother and father, when my mom passes, my dad's in Arlington, they already, in fact, when my father got his spot there, they had it designed for the 5 of us, because I was a minor at the time. And that changed as his years went on and we grew out. Then the depth of the grave would have been less to accommodate my mother and father. So she's going to be laid to rest on top of him. But if the children had died, we would have all been stacked. Definitely for the land usage.
I'm pretty sure that's something a lot of people aren't aware of. Pretty sure.
Arlington tells you. So
You
whoever.
haven't lost somebody yet, though you don't know that.
But the military, the person who is eligible for Arlington and chooses Arlington has to make those decisions. That's part of. It was part of what my father said he had to do when he chose Arlington, because you get to choose any military facility.
That's good to know.
At the time. Now, my dad's been gone 24 years, so I don't know if that's still the military concept. But
I don't know. My husband's retired Air Force, but I don't know. You know, he's not talking about any of this stuff.
well, but I know for you, when he passes, you're going to call Arlington, and they'll take care of everything. They'll look up
I
stuff.
hope I'm going to call him before then, so that I do know what to do, so that I'm
Well,
not
they
going to be.
usually they asked us to wait until my dad passed, and then they're connected to the funeral home.
Oh, I see.
And then they go get the body and take it to Arlington. Right now, I think there's something like an 8-year window, 8 years
Wow.
to be buried, because they're burying our guys now. So if you're a retiree, it's quite a while to be buried. So they put you on the refrigerator.
So these are the kind of topics you.
Yep.
discuss?
Right in the beginning, we're just kind of easing people into it, because again, it's only been our first 2. But as we move along, I mean, we facilitate it to let people speak. Then there's quizzes, and then there's topics. Like the first one I did is everyone had paper and pencil, and I said, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I'm going to say one word and just write for 2 minutes. And the word was death. Now, some people were blank, kind of like, others were writing like novels. And then we pair everybody up in a group, and they share with each other what they have said. So it's more of a facilitation so people can talk. And then, you know, there's a little bit of a topic. Barbara, who is my partner, and she's a retired hospice nurse, she brings little bits of information. What hospice can do for you, what a medical directive can do for you, what a DNR is, just to get you thinking about the things that you need to be aware of. And I hope to bring that in more and more as we grow and do more of them, to have little tidbits so people can go, oh, I never thought we could be buried in the woods. Because there are green cemeteries around the country where you can bring the cremains or the body and just dig a hole in the woods, and there you are. No embalming, no nothing.
So, will people be able to seek you out, or how will people find you?
Well, in the beginning, I set up a Facebook page, so I have a Facebook page. I now have it, thanks to you, in the patch as an event, so I want to thank you for that. I do my flyers.
Uh-huh.
I send it everywhere. And Panera's hosted our cafe last night on 234, and they want us back. They said, please come back.
Were you quiet?
Well, we have a little section,
Uh-huh.
you know, and he said, just keep coming until you're too big, and we'll worry about too
Uh-huh.
big later. And they provided the teas, and we make cake, and we have cakes and teas, and Panera's actually hosted the tea.
Is there a lot of sadness? Or?
No, there's personal sadness.
Uh-huh.
Some people spoke about an experience with death, and they got a little bit weepy, but the rest of us weren't in that because it was their story.
Mhm.
A lot of laughing, which I was happy for because I was hoping for that, but you
Right.
just never know. So one of my quizzes, I had the first one, was sort of like tongue-in-cheek kind of quiz on death. I liked it because one of the questions was, if you could be an undead, which one would you pick? Zombie, vampire, ghoul, mummy, or ghost? And that made
Oh.
everyone laugh, you know, because when you're all there serious, and then when you read, you know, and then everyone talks about what they did.
Did you discuss the afterlife, or?
Not yet. I mean, there might be
But-
a
but it might
concept.
be-
It might, again, though, that would be from an I point of view. So if I wanted to talk about my thoughts on the afterlife, I could state them, but it's not really a debate as to whether or not it's there, because the idea is no ideology, no philosophy, no religion, in that the facilitators move you to. And a person is welcome to speak their truth about whatever, but it's not really to guide anybody else.
So the idea is really just to take the fear and the mystery out of dying. Is that correct?
Out of death,
Out of death.
the word.
Just that one?
Yeah, because
Because it's only one day.
Well, it's only one word that makes people freeze. And one of the other twisted things we say is, at the end, I said it last night, so having done this cafe today, what have you not been doing to live your life fully because of this perceived anxiety and fear about death? Not a judgment, just an option. What are you holding back? Maybe you aren't taking those vacations, or maybe you're not leaving your parents because in the back of your mind you think, what happens if something
Sure.
happens to them, me? I don't want my kids to go on that hike. What if? You know, what are we not living to our fullest because we have these deep
I'm
emotions?
not jumping out of an airplane in a parachute.
I loved it. I loved it. I've been parachuting, I've been bungee jumping, I've been spelunking. I'm like,
Not the airplane. I could do
Yeah.
this. I could do the cave thing. I'd be good with that. It's just I really have a fear of heights, and I hate to fly.
I don't like height, but I'm telling you,
But you were okay skydiving?
because when you fall out of the plane
Uh-huh.
at 14,000 feet above, you're floating. It is not like that roller coaster where your stomach is gone. It is like a feather. It is so surreal and dreamy. If it wasn't so expensive, I'd be doing it all the time.
I'm going to probably just take your word for that.
That's okay. I have videos for you one day. You should come over for tea and cake, and I'll
Oh, I see how you are now. Well, I want to thank you very much for
Oh,
coming
thank
today
you.
and telling me about the Death Cafe. And we're going to have the contact information on the screen, either behind us or at the bottom of the video, so people will be able to get in touch with you.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
well,
so
thank you very much
appreciate-
for coming.
Oh, thank you much.
All right. Thank you, viewers, for joining us today. I hope you'll be back again when our guest is Rick Holt. And a big thanks to our producer, Bill Golden.